This is all the things in here are based on the songs of Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground from the 60s through the 2000s. That's how long his career was. He died in 2000, I think he died in 2012. I was supposed to have the show in 2011, and I had a weird deal. I was going to show up with Doug Fur in the Jupiter Hotel, and went through this weird thing, and it just didn't feel right, so I backed out of the show, and I'm really, really happy to have it here, so thank you so much. I watched a documentary with Lou Reed. I was never really a Lou Reed fan. Like, I knew Velvet Underground, like old punk rock bands, like Iggy Pop was friends with them. He was friends with Andy Warhol and my favorite painter, Basquiat. And then I watched this documentary with Elvis Costello on Netflix in bed one night. It wasn't a documentary, it was just like an interview. He interviews Lou Reed, and Lou Reed didn't really do interviews. And here's this soft-talking, tall, good-looking, older guy, and he's just like unapologetic, kind of an asshole. But he's talking really, really honest about his life and his career. And never did he really just talk about music. He always talked about music and art and performance and all of it together. In the audience that night was Julian Schnabel, the artist, who was Lou Reed's best friend. And anyway, they talked about Andy Warhol. There's Andy Warhol on the wall over there. Andy Warhol started the Velvet Underground in a time period in the 60s when this could happen. And a famous artist could basically start a boy band, which is interesting in itself. And he picked up, all these New York boys that, half of them were like super into the transvestite, transsexual scene. And of course, Andy Warhol was too. They were all club boys. And it just so happened that Lou Reed was like a major songwriter. So of course, this is Walking the Wild Side, which is like a huge, huge song. It was the first time on the radio that oral sex was mentioned, heavily censored. He had several, like 3 #1 hits. Anyway, the Banana. As we talked about the Bananas, the Velvet Underground's first album with Nico. Nico was a model who became a singer. Andy Warhol did a painting, lithograph of Banana, and of course it symbolized the penis. It was a natural organism, but he loved advertising, canvas can. The Banana has become a comic, and in Portland, if you know, up around 12th and Division, it says "Art fills the void." There's a banana up on the wall. It's been that wall's been tagged more than any wall in the whole city, but they paint it every single year. It just gets repainted by different artists, Anyway, the original stickers, they made these really cool stickers and these things, and like stickers and the little covers they would make out, and you peel it. This is a real trick to it. You peel the banana off, and underneath the banana was a dildo. There's a pink dildo, so that's the big trick to the banana. The good bunnies are just like the drug era. Like Lou Reed was a total heroin addict. He did every drug there was. Like when he quit one and then went to another thing, became an alcoholic, became a Buddhist. He ran his whole thing. When I started to do this show, I really wanted, because he was still alive, and now he's passed on. So it's strange because all these paintings that are on the wall, I have almost 30 more that aren't completed. So I've been working on this forever. And some of these paintings are like, can I do that painting? And I look at it and I'm like, oh, this is 2011. The style is totally different. I'm going to repaint it. So I repainted everything. So this is all new, even though it's based on the original designer painting. And if everyone here knows me, and I just pump shit out. And I just make it. I never spend time on stuff, and I really spend time on this. The really important songs, like this is, there's just a lot of drag queen stuff, a lot of his personal nature. I really respect him as, I'm not like a super Lou Reed fan either. I think he's awesome. I think it's cool that we were just talking that he kind of remained underground his whole life, even though he had gold records and #1 hits, but he still retained his artistic integrity until his death. I think that his narrative is really important as far as a writer. It's not just like, everyone knows the songs, but you've heard the songs, one of the best lines ever is she never lost her head even while she was giving head. Like, it's awesome. It's a funny little line, but it made him really famous. Let's see. I'm saying a lot. I have a lot in my mind right now. Yeah, I mean, he was kind of always on the fringe of stuff. Like, yeah, he said the Colored Girls Say, like, that was a huge thing on the radio. I mean, the acts of revolution, I think, that Lou Reed had started. And I didn't grow up with Lou Reed. I was probably 12 years old when I heard his music. It was like 1985. And I remember like researching it, and I was just like, man, it's so old. It's like the Doors music, right? Like, and you know, it's like Boys and Men's popular and shit, and Wham. So Velveteen Underground didn't really meet, or you know, Velvet Underground. So Velveteen Underground. So I'm watching this Netflix documentary, and I get done, and he's being interviewed by Elvis Costello, and it's really, everything's important. Everything he says is just like, wow, you're like the coolest fucking guy I've ever heard talk. And I get out of bed after I'm in bed, I'm ready to go to sleep. I get out of bed and I go paint, and I'm just writing shit down, like I'm really inspired to do stuff. And then I was like, man, I should do a Lou Reed show, you know? It's like, well, you know, and then boom, Velveteen Rabbit popped in my head. I was like, man, I'm gonna call it Velveteen Underground, which I trademarked now. And I Googled it, and I'm just like, no one's ever done anything about this. That's such a term, I feel that it would be done these days. But Velveteen Rabbit, of course, is the story of the boy that gets scarlet fever and his favorite rabbit, and you know, as soon as he gets better, like they have to burn all this stuff, so they burn the rabbit. So the rabbit definitely symbolizes death, which is apparent in much of Lou Reed's work. Since he was a heroin addict, that is the ultimate pleasure, but at the pinnacle of death. You know, which he then took on to everything. He got into really hardcore S&M, some pretty far out shit that he's been in his life. I'm pretty sure right around 16 years, he was in a relationship with a transsexual who had never had bottom surgery. So Lou Reed was seen in public with basically a woman, but it was really a man. So he wasn't going to be an athlete, but he was too small. I think that the time that he lived in is apparent in his work, and as the decades changed, so did he, which I think a lot of artists don't. I think he still retains his 60s vibe and what was happening, but he definitely changed as he went along. I'm really happy with the show. It's Gay Pride in Portland, so this is happy for me to do this show about a man who was kind of all over the board as far as his sexuality, his partying. I've read so much about Andy Warhol. I know so much about him, and I had discovered Jean-Michel Basquiat through him, which was the influence for me to become a painter. So it's neat to do a show, because I've done a show about Andy Warhol. I've definitely done stuff involving Basquiat, and now I've done Lou Reed. So thank you. So does anyone have any questions about? There's a lot of information in here, like a shit ton. Yeah.
So you had said that the Velveteen Rabbit or a rabbit was in all of the pieces.
Yeah, it's
in all of them.
Well, someone just pointed me out. There's not a rabbit in one of the pieces. That is true. So I did try to include it in almost every piece, but you'll see it like.
Trying to find rabbits.
You know, I did a show years ago about Alice in Wonderland, and I painted all the first book. I did every single recreate every plate, and that's on my show. And thank you. And I have the rabbit in there. You know, there's Alice in Wonderland, and I've done a show where Jesus is in the background of every painting. You know, like Revelations. There's just like this happy zigzag Jesus. So I feel like the rabbit's an important thing, but yes, in this painting, as Suzanne pointed out, there was no rabbit. I'm sorry about that.
Do you want
but I still feel like the show, as it tackles some like kind of hardcore subjects, you know, like This Is Waiting for My Man, which Chris and I were talking about this today. It's basically Lou Reed waiting for his drug dealer, right? And but it's also about him. Because he's like, you gotta wait, and you wait. I'm waiting for this thing that's so important to me, but you know, I'm experiencing all this stuff while that happens, right? So he's also waiting for his boyfriend to come home. So there's like two different things, which is like, I have my drug dealer and then I have my sex dealer. right? So it's kind of some hardcore stuff, but I made it pretty friendly, you know, except there's a dead rabbit, you know, so I tried to make things really bright, even though the subject matter was pretty brutal. Like that painting of Andy Warhol, that song was written with the member of the Velvet Underground. They all hate each other, by the way. They hated Lou Reed. He was a control freak. He was really, really hard to work with just because he had his own vision. This is the way I'm going to do it. And they continued on the band after he left. He became super, super famous after he left. And just tacked with all this stuff. And they were just like this box band that Andy Warhol would put on tour, you know. And Lou Reed, until the day he died, never received royalties from any material done by the Velvet Underground. Andy Warhol just took care of it, you know, just like, it was his mentor, but also his friend. So that song was written after Andy Warhol had died, or after he had been shot, excuse me. And it was about the time when, after Andy Warhol was shot, Lou Reed was helping take care of him. Here's this guy that kind of, not really screwed him over, but kind of, a little bit like, kind of packaged him. He tried to control this artist, you know, another artist, which Andy Warhol was famous for doing, controlling other artists. But he did love Andy Warhol, and I think it's hard to tell what Andy Warhol's feelings were for people that were close to him through stuff I've read, but it seemed like he cared about Lou Reed. So there's a lot of people in his life, like Julian Schnapp was there, and Basquiat, and there's a bunch of famous people that, of course, Lou Reed, that Andy Warhol touched his life. But and that one, Andy Warhol is the rabbit. If that's okay. All right, any questions?
Do you compose a piece ahead of time? Do you have an idea where the images are going to go, or is it real spontaneous?
That's a really good question. I think that I definitely, if I'm doing a subject, like this is the song, I read it and then I listen to it, and I listened to all this as I was going along. Some of these I just read the entire thing as I was composing it. Some of them I just like, okay, I'm just going to do this by listening to it, you know. And I didn't do a sketch or anything. Like this is Perfect Day, which is, it was re-recorded by Iggy Pop for Train Spotting, if anyone's ever seen that movie. Yeah. So that boom, when that song was re-recorded, Lou Reed was famous again. So, but this is a completely different painting than the original one I did. I looked at the painting, it didn't fit, so I just redid it. And I think I'm just like fully, you know, as many artists are. Sam, I know you're 100% spontaneous painter. It's pretty spontaneous, but I think that I really start my work as an abstract and then kind of just tighten it into a, you know, as more and more. Because I do have to edit and I have to get this in there and this has to be in there. You know, sometimes you forget a rabbit, but anyway, yeah. So I don't really plan it out, but I think that once I get a central image down where I know where it's going to go, it's there. It's just in my head. Yeah.
So it's kind of similar, but like with your words too, do you just like put them wherever they're going to fit? Like you just write them and you just squeeze them in terms of fit? Or do you think, you know, you think like, well, I want to have this in this place, this line.
Sorry.
Turn your fingers off.
I know. The question is, do I plan out my words or not, right? I mean, I know they're going to be in there, but I think at this point, like, I did a painting years ago where I wrote words all over someone's face and I showed it to one of my bandmates, and he's like, that looks like shit. And I was like, oh my God, you're right, it totally looks like shit. Like, I need open space, like, there has to be some breathing room, right? So I can't, like, cover someone's whole face with words and make this whole crazy thing. So I think that, to me, the words are just another image in the work, you know? But I think that a lot of times, like, as I painted this, okay, this piece is all about a drag queen putting on makeup in the morning, you know? And I knew I was going to do like this face. I was going to try to do something that was close to a human-sized face, so I could almost make up one of those little Barbie things, right? And I was like, okay, I'll put a mirror over in the corner, you know, but I'll make it look like an ashtray. That was like how I thought. And then I'll put the title in that, right? So my title is usually apparent somewhere. And then I think it's just kind of a sprawl, but I'm just trying to make it so, you know, I think the most important part of my work is the fact that you can look at it and see stuff every time you look at it. You know, and I think that the words are definitely become part of that. It's just as spontaneous sometimes, and sometimes I'm making it, and then a word next to another word makes another word, which is awesome. It's really, really fun to do that. But I can't really plan it all out. But I think that I've been doing it. We've all been doing art for so long. More and more you do something, you know, it just becomes instinctual. I know this is going to come here, this is going to go here. I use, everything's all ink. So I do the complete painting, and then I use speedball ink with a long brush, a long single hair brush. So everything's all single hair brush. Back in the day, I used to use Copic pens. I used them for like 6 months. If anyone owns any of that work, you give it back to me, I'll redo it. They, if you put it in the sun, it completely just washes all black out. It's gone. And so I was watching the artist Clutch. If anyone knows Clutch, does a lot of stuff. He's like a graffiti guy. I watched him one day lining. He was using, sorry, I know I'm taking a lot of time. He was lining using ink, and I was just like, wow, man, that's crazy, that long brush. He's like, yeah, this is an old liner brush to do sign painting. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And I started painting next to him, hanging out. And he's like, you shouldn't really use those pens. You know, like, I've seen you paint, man, you can make a line. And that was it. That was the last time I ever used a pen. So I just use, it's really fun. It took me a while to figure it out. It's really, really liquid. And I'm a big fan of Ralph Steadman, if anyone knows who that is. That's Hunter S. Thompson's cartoonist. He worked for the Rolling Stone forever. He's an English guy, and he stands up, he has a big piece of paper, and he has a big dip pen, and he just dips, and it's just this huge mess of ink around him. And he just does these really quick, really elaborate, awesome ink drawings. And I think that was really, you know, you guys know what I'm talking about, like Fear and Loathing? What that is?
They're messy.
Yeah, they're a little bit messy, but they're like totally exact. Like he's, I think that was an inspiration for me to do that too. I stand up and create all the abstract and all the painting I do standing up, and then I do all the inking sitting down. So it's really similar to the way a comic book is made, you know, except I don't make it drawn. I just start straight with the paint and then formulate that into something. As soon as the painting's done, then I basically line it out the same way a comic book would be done, as it goes from pencil. I worked in comic book chemistry for a long time too. They start with a pencil, and then that gets inked, and then it gets colorized, you know, and then they'll digitize it. So, yeah, it's really similar to a comic book. I'm just, even with the words, the lettering.
You just do it backwards.
Yeah, it's just in a different, yeah, it gives you a different system, yeah. Yeah.
Well, since I'm the oldest person here,
Yay!
being a child of the 60s growing up in San Francisco, I'm fairly familiar with
You're the
that
coolest
era.
person here. So
Yeah, totally.
No, here's the coolest.
And hanging out.
Becky Chan.
But the thing that I found is even though there were a lot of musicians coming out there that were exceeding the bounds, he was reamed more than any musician.
Yeah.
And from the beginning, he said, fuck you, if you don't
Right.
like it,
Yeah.
it's who I, and he wouldn't change for anyone, which I admired. What I love about your paintings is his music was really loud, and a lot of people never heard the words. Your words, you have to seek them out, and I think you had to do the same thing listening to the music.
Yes, for sure.
What did you just say?
100%.
So
Yeah.
a lot of people are going, oh, that song is horrible, but then they realized there was a lot of heartache and pain in these songs.
Yeah, 100%.
It wasn't just
There's a lot of words I didn't know
two
existed.
chords of crap.
Yeah, right.
Got nailed with.
I think just generally painting music, which I've been doing a lot of in the last couple of years, I'm not running out of subject matter. It just gives me a nice focus. Like, plus, man, I grew up with a lot of different music, and I've just been listening. I just put on classic rock now because that's like before my time, you know. So there's a lot of music I've figured out, and the words are such an important thing in that era, you know. And I mean, there's so much. I just like, wow, that's crazy that you wrote this song. You know, I mean, some songs were never heard because they weren't on the radio. It's not like now. If it wasn't on the radio, people wouldn't know what it was. I mean, Lou redo, like he's re-recorded some of these songs. They've been on different albums like 8-10 times, and he's got almost 40 albums out. So. Yeah, you're right. Like some crazy times, like he was who he was, and that was it. He did not apologize to people, and he lived in New York his whole life. You know, he was surrounded by that city Some people say that Lou Reed 100% defines New York, for the era. I definitely learned a shit ton about. I lived in New York for 1 year, and I wish that I would have known more about Lou Reed then. Any other
They're
questions?
wonderful.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Yay. Thanks, guys.